And then, the other thing is he's known for absolutely great guitar solos. And, a lot of people talk about Jimmy Page being a sloppy player, sloppy lead player. And in some respects, I understand why that's being said. We can talk about that a little in his guitar style. But the point of the matter is he really, whether you think it was sloppy or not, all of these solos are memorable. All of these classic Zeppelin songs, whether it's Whole Lotta Love or Rock and Roll or Stairway to Heaven, possibly the greatest guitar solo ever recorded by most, a lot of people consider it that. Not the most complicated one, but possibly the most impactful one. But plenty of other great ones too. The solo in Achilles' Last Stand is brilliant. The solo in Since I've Been Loving You is one of the most emotional rock blues solos ever recorded. And then you have like Heartbreaker, which was on Zeppelin 2, which is like in the middle of the song, he just stops and rips out a freestyle guitar solo. How badass is that? And how in the pre-eruption days, right? How often do you hear a guy just stop in the middle of the song and just take, a minute and do a freestyle guitar solo? And you can say, yeah, it's got some mistakes in it and some clams in it and stuff, but what a Guitar Hero moment. And then after that, when the band comes back in after that solo break, he takes another solo that's even better. So then you have things that also have like these moody attitudes, like the solo in What Is and What Should Never Be, which is just really slow and sort of like drowsy, but really effective. And he does that on a slide. And it's got this really interesting attitude to it. It's not a ripping solo. It's just pure melody and attitude. But, I can sit here and hum it to you because it's unforgettable. And, solo on Tangerine. And so most of Jimmy Page's guitar solos, whether you think he's a sloppy player or not, are super memorable and super melodic and super famous. And, you can't take that away from him. And then the other thing is there's usually a rock blues track on every Zeppelin album, one way or another, something that's in a blues format. I mean, they were, heavily blues rock influenced, but I mean, whether it's something like a 1-4-5 progression like You Shook Me or I Can't Quit You, Babe, which is pretty much a straight up 1-4-5. Those were, like I said, sort of blues standards from the bluesmen. There's that on the first album. And then you have things like the Lemon Song on the second album. And then you have on the third album, you have probably his best, which is Since I've Been Loving You, where he breaks away from 1-4-5 blues and plays a different kind of blues progression. And it's spectacular. And the recorded solo on that, on Zeppelin 3, is one of his best solos. And then live in the day, it's one of the classic videos on YouTube that they do Zeppelin does let people see Since I've Been Loving You as one of the ones that they don't tend to copyright kill you on. So if you watch the live version of Since I've Been Loving You on YouTube, you'll see how wonderful his lead playing was and how interesting those solos were, because he would, instead of he's mostly a pentatonic player and stays in the blues scale and in the minor pentatonic, but on something like that, it allows him to go into harmonic minor in places as well. So you get some different flavors that are beyond your typical blues flavors. The other thing that I want to call out is attitude and emotion. Jimmy's playing and everything about Led Zeppelin was absolutely drenched in sex and going straight for the crotch. It really is the birth of what we now know as cock rock. And, that kind of genre within the heavy rock genre. You can have heavy rock and it isn't that sexual, but you can have heavy rock that is that sexual, and launched bands like Whitesnake and careers like Coverdale's and careers like John Sykes, who is like probably in some ways the perfect descendant of cock rock that started in Zeppelin. But and Plant was a big part of this too. But for Jimmy's part, his electric guitars and his stage demeanor were filled with a swagger and confidence and bravado. And it was just really amazing. He'd take off on a half-hour journey in the middle of Dazed and Confused and jam away. He didn't care if he was sloppy and didn't care where it was going. He knew he could pull it off. His balls were gigantic. I mean, they really were. I mean, he had this cockiness at that time where he could really he thought he could do anything with that guitar on stage, and for the most part, he could certainly do anything he wanted to do. And there was all of this ballsiness, but there was also this breathtaking subtlety as well. But his leads were always very tasty and very melodic and very emotional. So you get this attitude in his playing, but you never lose the emotional side. You have this swagger, and then you have this delicacy, right? Where it's like 1 minute I'm the biggest dick in the world and I can play anything, and the next minute he's playing something very tender and very quiet. So you have this attitude and you have the emotional aspect of it.
So there's again the light and shade aspect of it coming back there too.
Yeah, but I mean, sometimes it's just like he understood that, like, again, if you listen to, like, we'll play like a snippet of the solo of What Is and What Should Never Be. It's there's really nothing to it, but it's just so right. It's just so perfect. It's just this really lazy thing where it's pure attitude. And it doesn't have anything technically challenging. It doesn't have anything that's hard to play or anything like that. It's just a very simple set of phrases, but it's just played with this attitude that's absolutely perfect for the mood of the song. And he's not overplaying, he's not overdoing it, and he never does that. But he just, and then, yes, we're going to get into the part where you just mentioned mystique and influence. And that has just been a huge part of what he was about.
And he's been also super influential in terms of like guitar style and guitar playing style. Like, I was a Guns N' Roses fan before I was a big Led Zeppelin fan, because like when I started listening to rock music, Guns N' Roses happened to reach me first, you know?
Sure.
And when I listen to Slash's playing, there's a lot of Jimmy Page in there, and the same goes for the guy from Aerosmith. What's his name again?
Yep. They're all the sons of Jimmy Page.
Yeah, exactly.
Absolutely.